Casavon, Mr. Lauren, Mr. Hines, Mr. Richard, Mr. Willie, Mr. Matthews, Mr. Davis, Mr. Manella, Mr. Drum, Mr. Randolph.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, we have a quorum.
Thank you. If you have any cell phones, please silence them, or beepers, silence them. If you disagree with the decision that this commission makes, there are appeal cards over to my right on the banister there. The same is true with speaker cards. If you wish to speak on any item, please complete one of the speaker cards and turn it into our staff. Each side will have 10 minutes to speak on any item. Then there will be a 5-minute rebuttal. We will keep track of the time here. If after your case is heard and you wish to leave, please exit the building. Don't try and go out in the lobby. I realize it's getting cool and everything, but the noise comes back into the chambers here. Ms. Casabon, would you lead us in invocation, please?
Right. Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to come out tonight to do the parish business. Lead and guide us in all our decisions, that they will be the best decisions that we can make. Take us safely home. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Mr. Drum, Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item on our agenda is the approval of the December 10th, 2013 minutes. They were in your packet. Hopefully you had an opportunity to read them. Ms. Casabon, you have your light on?
Oh.
Okay. Everyone had an opportunity to cover the minutes. Any changes need to be made? I'll accept a motion to approve. Moved by Mr. Richard to approve, second by Mr. Davis. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Public hearings, consent calendar. Any items not pulled from the consent calendar are automatically dispensed by vote as approved and/or as per staff comments. Items pulled from the consent calendar shall be discussed and voted upon individually. Staff, do we have any items that you need to have pulled? Ron, do you have any items that need to be pulled on the consent? Commissioners, you have any? Well, I do. The Money Hill, I'd like to have it pulled. I don't think we had a response, at least there was not a response to a letter that went out. Did anyone get a letter back from the developer on that?
I am the developer, I can address it.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
You're gonna pull it?
Please vote on pulling the Money Hill Phase 2A and 2B subdivision. District 6, amount of $100,000 for sewer, expires March 5th, 2013. The debtors Money Hill Plantation Limited, partnership, Parish Council District Representative, Honorable Richard Tanner. Please vote.
You didn't see it, thanks a lot.
Motion carries to pull. All right, in the packet there was a letter that went out to the, let me see who it went to.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
where was that letter?
It went out to Money Hill,
January 7th.
yeah, January 7th. The last paragraph, therefore it is recommended that the performance obligation in the amount of $100,000 not be released at this time and to be reviewed at the February 11th meeting along with detailed explanation. Excuse me, we didn't really need to pull that one because it's February the 11th and not here. All right, I'll have to accept the motion to approve. Who made the motion? Who made the motion?
To approve the consent calendar? Or this?
This item.
Okay.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Matthews, seconded by Mr. Willie. Please vote on the Money Hill item. Motion carries. Thank you. And now I need a motion on the consent calendar, moved by Mr. Willie, seconded by Mr. Matthews. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. That's the petition request. We don't have any. Entering St. Tammany Parish, we don't have any. Revocations, we don't have any. Re-subdivisions, we don't. Dormant subdivision review, we don't have anything. Tentative subdivision review. First item is SD 14-01-001, the Estates of Money Hill Plantation, Ward 5, District 6. Developer owners, Money Hill Plantation LLC. Parish Council District Representatives, Honorable Richard Tanner. The engineer is J.V. Burks and Associates. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a proposed rural subdivision, the Estates of Money Hills Plantation. It's the first phase. I understand they may be developing future phases, but this is the first phase, which is a 10-lot subdivision, approximately 5 acres in size each. You also have to forgive my voice tonight. I have a little bit of laryngitis, so bear with me. Staff comments, planning comments. Due to the land that could potentially be developed by the developer, and the fact that the main roadway, which is North Money Hill Parkway, that traverses in a north-south bound direction and will act as a major collector between the two state highways, which is LA 21 to the north and LA 435 to the south. The staff would recommend that an 80-foot wide right-of-way be reserved along the entire length of the roadway from Louisiana Highway 21 to LA Highway 435 instead of the 60-foot as proposed, in the instance that future development of this large acreage parcel may warrant a boulevard to be constructed. And if you look on your survey plats, like I say, you'll just see a small area that kind of depicts the 10 lots, plus another larger area that's labeled as a portion of Lot 16. That particular remaining portion of parcel, I think, constitutes close to 4,000 acres, or maybe a little bit more. So, I think it's important that we look at this as a potential collector road if future development occurs, so that we can connect those two highways together. Comment number 2, the signature block needs to be corrected to depict Director of Parish Engineering instead of Parish Engineer. Comment 3, the developer is in violation of the maximum block length of 1,500 feet length for North Money Hill Parkway pursuant to Section 40-033 of Subdivision Regulations 499. And given that the length of the roadway is almost 3,000 feet long without an intersecting roadway, and the potential for surrounding property to be developed by the owner, which constitutes thousands of acres, the staff recommends that at least one intersecting right-of-way running in an east-west direction be provided. Some additional comments. The proposed development has jurisdictional wetlands. Therefore, the developer should be required to submit a copy of an approved Army Corps of Engineers permit to the Department of Engineering, if applicable, prior to receiving a work order in conjunction with a preliminary subdivision review process. Comment 2, Parish Code requires that land clearing permit must be applied for and obtained through the Department of Development prior to the developer receiving a work order in conjunction with a preliminary subdivision review process. The staff recommends approval, subject to the developer complying with all staff comments. In addition, if the commission decides to grant the tentative subdivision request, a waiver of the regulations are required relative to the violation of the maximum block length pursuant to Section 40-100 minor waiver of regulations of Subdivision Ordinance 499, which requires a 2/3 majority vote of the full membership of the commission, which is 8 members, in order to grant said waiver. Department of Engineering has some comments.
Restrictive covenants need to state that the finished floor needs to be 1 foot above the crown of the street. What I've been told is they're going to ask for a waiver on that because of the grade changes on the site. Legal description and calls bearings on the plat are in conflict, correct as needed. The signature block needs to be corrected to depict Director of Engineering instead of Parish Engineer. A predial servitude of passage is needed for North Money Hill Parkway from LA 21 to the southern end of Lot 8. Provide drainage servitude for off-site drainage north of the subdivision. I've discussed that with them. They'll address that at preliminary. Informational items, the following is needed at preliminary submittal. Need stormwater plan with stabilized construction entrance and adequate sediment erosion controls. I saw that in an email this evening. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. Complete the LDQ permit process for stormwater, have a SWIP on site. Let's submit an NOI. And they've emailed me a SWIP and NOI today. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. Department of Environmental Services comments.
The developer is proposing the use of individual water wells for this subdivision and therefore will need a waiver from the Planning Commission. Section 4036-1A2 Subdivision Regulatory Ordinance 499 states whenever the average lot size of a proposed subdivision to be located entirely within an A2 subdivision district is greater than 2 acres, the Planning Commission, at the time of its consideration of the tentative plan for the subdivision, may waive the requirement provided in paragraph 1 upon showing that the developer, by the developer, that the implementation of provisions in said paragraph would be a manifestly unreasonable financial hardship. Since the average lot size in the subdivision is greater than 5 acres, the staff has no objections to the granting of this waiver.
Thank you. Paul, first comment under Department of Engineering, you read it and then you said something else, and I didn't quite understand what you said.
Okay, my comment originally was restrictive covenants need to state that the finished floor needs to be 1 foot above the crown of the street. They contacted me after they got that comment and explained to me that the road is much higher than some of the lots are, so that's impractical.
Okay.
So we discussed an alternative that they're going to put on there, and that can happen at preliminary.
Okay, all right, that makes sense now, okay. Let's see, Mr. Shane.
Good evening, Mr. Doherty and
evening,
Honorable
sir.
Commission. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell firm. I represent Money Hill Plantation. I have with me this evening Mr. Burks, my engineer, and also Mimi Dossett, who is the manager of Money Hill and the developer of this project. We, for the most part, are in accord with all of the staff comments. I'll let you know which ones that we maybe have a little different feeling about. This project is unique in that you will see it is 10 large lots, 5+ acre lots, that are really on the western northern portion of the Money Hill track, as most of you know it. This property actually will have its primary access on the Money Hill Parkway, which is a newly constructed road that ties into Louisiana Highway 21, Military Road. So this is the beginning of some estate-sized lot development on what most people refer to as the new entrance that many have long waited for Money Hill, to provide additional access in addition to the primary access that most of you are familiar with along Highway 435. Why don't I comment on the comments that I think most likely maybe raised some thoughts or comments from you. With regard to comment 1 under planning, we don't think that it's necessary that there be an 80-foot right-of-way in connection with the development of these 10-acre lots. And in fact, these are the only estate lots that we have on the drawing board or the master plan in this section of the property. It might be easy to be confused because we have approximately 1,000 lots that are approved in our PUD, but our PUD is more than 2 miles away from this site. It doesn't mean that they won't connect, but there is already existing access points to the PUD. I think that the point that the planning department makes, though, about the future is very appropriate in that we need to think about what's going to happen if, in fact, there's additional development in the future, even though, again, I reaffirm that is not our present plan. These are the only lots that we intend to develop in this area. If you'll take a look at the tentative plat, you will see between lots 14 and 13, we have specifically reserved a strip of land, which in fact could serve as a right-of-way to allow us to develop an artery, if you will. We also would be able to accomplish the same thing on the south side of Lot 9. And I'll tell you that even if we do not develop further estate lots in this area. As Money Hill grows in the future, it is the developer's intention to also develop other roads and actually connect to some existing roads that crisscross the property and have a tie to Highway 21. So I guess a couple of thoughts as it relates to the first comment. All of our eggs are not in one basket, meaning that this is not the only access for these 10 lots. Number two, if you'll take a look at the plat, you'll see that we reserved 10 feet on each side of the 60-foot right-of-way across those lots, and you'll see that that 10 feet is for utility, drainage, and access, so that in the event we need to take the 60-foot right-of-way and expand it, we do need 80 feet, even though we don't anticipate that. We are specifically reserving that 10 feet across each lot. So I think that we've probably met at least the spirit of the thought from planning as it relates to having a potential 80 feet available, but we prefer to do it as indicated, meaning a 60-foot right-of-way, the 10-foot reservation on the front of each of these lots. I've also again told you that there would be two very easy access points to the east between lots 14 and 13 and on the south side of lot 9. And again, reaffirm to you that we do not have any intention of developing any more estate lots at this particular location. Moving on to comment 3, under planning, we would respectfully request the waiver of the block length requirement. We do not think that there are any issues of safety as it relates to the ability to have adequate turnaround, which often I think is really the genesis for the 1,500 linear foot rule. And we know that that is a waiver item that you must consider. But we would again ask that you grant a waiver as it relates to the 1,500 foot requirement. With regard to the Department of Engineering requirements, we agree that comment 1 is probably better reserved for preliminary, although I will say that in this instance, the road was in fact built on the highest ground in that area. It's on the ridge. And I would also tell you that there are considerable changes in elevation within each lot, so that the risk of having a road that would serve as a levee or a moat or a dam and that would not allow water to get off of the site, which can happen in subdivisions, really will not happen here because of the topography. And I have confidence that my engineer working with your staff at the time we come to you for preliminary, we will have a proposal, realizing that we may need a waiver in that regard, but I think you will not feel that, again, the premise behind this rule will be compromised in any way. With regard to item 4 about predial servitude of passage, a predial servitude of passage has already been put into some private restrictive covenants for this portion of the parkway and has been recorded in the public records. If we need to provide those, we probably did not provide those to the planning department. I don't think Mr. Keller's seen them, have you? Which is my error, but we know that that's something that we can do because this is going to be a private road, and we recognize that there certainly needs to be an access right for all of these lots to Highway 21. I think the only other item bearing comment tonight would be the comment of environmental services. Again, as you might imagine, there are no central sewer and water facilities that are close to this site. We do have some in the PUD, but the PUD, as I say, is approximately 2 miles away, and it's just not economically feasible to run those services for these relatively few lots. So we don't believe that individual water wells and individual mechanical treatment facilities will in any way compromise public safety, or I'm sorry, public health, and we would ask that you grant a waiver in that regard. If any of you have any questions concerning my comments or any of the others, I'll be glad to address them.
Thank you, Mr. Shane.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak for this project? Anyone wish to speak against this project? I'll close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Matthews.
Staff, first of all, I got a couple of questions on some of these items that you all put in here that I frankly don't understand. Under engineering, the informational item number 3, the notice of intent and the agency interest number, what are those?
Okay, anytime you have a project in Louisiana where you're disturbing 5 acres or more of ground, you have to get a permit with the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. And we're just making sure they're getting that permit.
And these are items that they have to file with DEQ?
Correct.
Okay.
And I believe they emailed that to me this evening. I didn't really get a chance to look at it yet.
And number 5, provide drainage servitude for off-site drainage from north of the subdivision. What exactly does that require?
That's something that I think we'll look at preliminary. I've discussed it with Sean a little bit. Basically, they have some off-site water coming into the lots that needs to be captured at the northern lot and diverted away from the lots.
Okay. And that's really for preliminary, though?
That's probably something we can just wait till preliminary on.
Okay. Sounds like a good fishing pond to me. Will they let us go fishing? Jeff, I have a couple of questions for you, if you wouldn't mind. The allowing this to be an 80-foot wide road at some future point, and an actual parkway sounds like possibly a good idea. The 10-foot servitude on the front of each of these lots gives you all the ability to do that, is that correct?
Yes, sir. These are going to be private roads, so they're not going to be dedicated under any circumstance. And in my view, the 60-foot right-of-way depicted is a private servitude, and the 10 feet on the front of each lot, likewise being reserved for access, gives you the ability, if our traffic count and impacts in the future suggest through your traffic engineer that we need more than 2 lanes and that we need an 80-foot or more than a 60-foot wide right-of-way, yes, sir, we have the ability to do that because we certainly don't want to be precluded from having the ability to put in the necessary infrastructure, not only to meet your code, but to make it a first-class development with easy access.
And the lot owners will understand that they can't build on that and that.
Absolutely. It's well beyond their setback, or within the setback, as you can see. We also have buffers where we preserve most of the green along the road so
Okay.
that the homes are shielded from the road and vice versa.
What about the area north of this? Is it also able to accommodate an 80-foot right-of-way?
Well, we own it all, yes, sir.
Well, I mean, has any of this been sold and,
We have sold 4 approximate 6-acre parcels that are lightly shaded, lots 4 through 7A, pursuant to a minor subdivision plan,
okay?
maybe 3 months ago or 4 months ago. September, time gets by. But we have, to answer your question, we have the ability to expand our right-of-way beyond both north and south of these developed lots, and we certainly intend to be mindful in that regard because, as you can imagine, owning thousands of acres, who's to say what future generations may need as it relates
Right.
to infrastructure?
So
And
I
we-
assume lots 4 through 7A also have that 10-foot servitude?
I don't remember. I just don't remember. I think
That
they
was going to be a
do.
question that I had, because that went through a minor subdivision process, the more of the informal process, and I can't recall whether or not that plat showed that reserve, so we would
Well,
need to look into
okay,
that.
so if these don't, you're going to have a difficult time putting an 80-foot right-of-way.
Well-
You can go 80 foot and then 60 foot here and then 80 foot on the other side of it. That doesn't make sense.
No, but I would say this, that if they don't, we have a relationship with those buyers. None of them have pulled permits. I feel confident that we could get a 10-foot right-of-way from them if we needed it. I really don't remember. Do you remember?
Well, I can say that the road, as it's
No, no, just talking about, do you have 10 feet?
We
we
did
reserve-
not establish a 10-foot right-of-way in advance of purchasing these lots. They do all have a 75-foot landscaping buffer. And just to answer the question in general, if you look at the master plan of Money Hill, there are alternative entrances to and from Highway 21 and 435. So this, as we develop over many years ahead, we do not intend this to be the singular artery in and out of Money Hill. And these people will be, you know, these lots cannot be re-subdivided, these 5-acre lots. So only these 14 entrances will be off the highway. However, 60 feet, the road is currently 22 feet wide. So if we were need to develop beyond the 22 feet into the 60 feet of right-of-way that we currently have, there will not be any building or any kind of structure at all on the front 10 feet of those lots because they are restricted to a 75-foot landscaping buffer.
Yeah, but the landscaping buffer doesn't give you the right to come in and build a road.
No, but let me also, a couple of things. Number one, we haven't discussed this, but there's nothing to preclude the developer on that side of the road from going subsurface with curb if necessary. So as you know, I mean, your standard right-of-way is 60 feet, but can also be diminished to 50 feet if you go subsurface. So my point is that we can shrink the 80 feet if there is a need as it relates to those 4 sides. I
And
would
still
also,
come up with 4 lanes.
sir?
And still come up with 4
Yeah.
lanes.
You know, to go beyond 2 lanes, Sean was telling me you have to have a car count of over 5,000? Yes. And I mean, we're talking about 10 lots plus 4 lots here. Now, I recognize
Today.
that, well, I understand that. But I mean, I also came before you with a very similar subdivision plan next to Money Hill 3 or 4 months ago for Weyerhaeuser. And Weyerhaeuser owned lots of acres behind that. And quite frankly, we didn't have the requirement of the discussion. I'm not suggesting that the issue's not worth discussing, but I also think this risk, if anything, falls on the developer's shoulders because as it relates to having a 10-lot tentative subdivision approval, there's simply no need for more than a 60-foot right-of-way.
Well, I'm thinking of forward-looking. We don't know what's going to come south of this and what you're going to do north of this.
Well, but
you're
sir,
right.
if I could, though, also remember, please don't forget that we specifically put the 2 cuts to the east. And as I've told you, there are other existing roads now that connect to Highway 21 that we would not want all of our cars to go down one road anyway. So my point is, we have plans that we think will accommodate for a distribution of the vehicles that would not necessarily take them all down the parkway.
Well, I think this is a consideration that we probably ought to be looking at things like this more in the future to plan longer range. Be that as it may, the idea of the waiver that Money Hill is asking for the length without a intersecting roadway, these type of lots are huge lots, and I think this type of development begs not to have a lot of small blocks. So I personally would be in favor of that right-of-way, that waiver. And the waiver of the wells, while I'm not sure we discussed a manifestly unreasonable financial hardship, I think it would be something of a hardship, and I would be in favor of that waiver also.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Matthews. Mark?
Yes, I'd just like to ask one question. On
Pull
this, north-
pull your mic down.
I'm sorry. On this north side of Parkway, going on to, into Highway 21,
Yes, sir.
is this going to be a connector from Highway 21 now, going straight through from Ed Bush, straight through into Money Hill? Is that correct or not?
Well, it's a
Or
new
let me
driveway.
rephrase that. The new highway that they're proposing from Bogalusa to 1088 over here, that's not going to be part of this?
No, sir.
Okay.
No,
But
sir,
it-
this
but
is
it-
a private drive.
But it will be a gated community from that
It's
end?
gated, yes,
Okay.
sir, to be regulated. That's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to this be approved. With the waiver, excuse me.
I think, Bill, did you make?
No, I didn't make
Okay, all right. So we have a motion by Mr. Hines. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Lauren. Jeff, I do have one question, and it just has to do with the maintenance of the roadways and the drainage, as well as the future retention ponds and everything. Is that gonna be incorporated into some kind of a owner's fee or something like that?
It's all private, and it'll be maintained by the developer until at such time the developer turns it over to a homeowners association.
Okay,
But these lots will be subject to an association, and at some point, they will make a contribution toward those maintenance costs.
okay. I know that's probably the way it was gonna go, but
No.
I've seen too many subdivisions that don't have mandatory fees, so. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Richard?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to let you know I'll be abstaining on this vote. I own property in Money Hill and actually adjacent to this request, so I feel it's appropriate and for full disclosure for me to abstain.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have no further discussion. Please vote. Motion carries, 9 yea, and 1 abstention. So the, exceptions are approved, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item is, SD 14-01-002, Rule Court 1, Ward 1, District 1, Developer Owner Denham Investments LLC. The engineer is Collin Associates LLC. Parish Council District Representative, Honorable Marty Dean. Staff?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, this is a proposed A4 type development, smaller lots, 75 by 150, only total of 12 lots at the current time. Staff comments, the typical lot layout detail on the plat, which is referenced at the bottom middle of the plat, needs to be corrected to depict a 30-foot minimum front yard setback instead of the 25 that's depicted. Comment 2, Section 40-032.03 of Ordinance 499 requires an 80 by 100-foot minimum right-of-way at the entrance to all subdivisions with only one ingress-egress. Therefore, a waiver would be required since the developer does not wish to provide the expanded entrance. However, since the development is in essence a subphase of rural Deschênes subdivision and only constitutes 12 lots on a cul-de-sac street, the expanded entrance is not warranted. Therefore, the staff has no objection to the commission grant a waiver for this requirement. Some additional items, the proposed development has jurisdictional wetlands. Therefore, developers should be required to submit a copy of approved Army Corps of Engineer permit to the Department of Engineering prior to receiving a work order in conjunction with the preliminary subdivision review process. Comment 2, Parish Code requires land clearing permit to be applied for and obtained through the Department of Development prior to the developer receiving a work order in conjunction with the preliminary subdivision review process. Staff recommends approval, subject to developer complying with all staff comments. If the commission decides to grant the tentative subdivision request, a waiver of the regulations are required relative to the violation. It shouldn't say maximum block length. It should say from the expanded entrance requirement pursuant to Section 40-100 waiver of regulations of subdivision ordinance 499, which requires a 2/3 majority vote of the full membership of the commission, 8 members, in order to grant said waiver. Engineering has some comments.
Restrictive covenant needs to state that the finished floor is to be 1 foot above the crown of the street. State who will maintain the pond. Typical roadway section must show required 4-foot shoulders, show legend, show drainage servitude for the rear lot drainage, verify flood zone, state maximum block length. Informational items, state whether the pond is wet or dry, may need downstream improvements if draining additional water to Ruel Duchenne Drive. Need stormwater plan indicating BMP selection and placement with legend and BMP details for preliminary. Need adequate BMPs indicated on the stormwater site plan to prevent stormwater and or sediment from entering Aldridge Oak subdivision retention pond. Need copy of the LDEQ stormwater permit with AIN prior to work order. Need a copy of the SWIP maintained on construction for stormwater inspections. Department of Environmental Services has comment.
Our subdivision files indicate that the existing sewer system does not have the additional capacity needed to accept sewer flows from the subdivision. Therefore, the developer is advised to contact Tammany Utilities to discuss the availability of additional sewer capacity and options for expansion of the current wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you. Who in the audience is here to represent this? Good evening.
Good evening. Philip Mayu for Denham Investments, the developer of the subdivision. With regards to the staff commentary, we realized we made a clerical error on the 25-foot front setback, and it's my understanding that our people have contacted staff and said that we understand we made that mistake and it will be 30 foot. As for number 2, it's not that we didn't want to put in an expanded entrance. We only have 60 feet, so therefore we can't provide what we don't have. However, staff has commented that they have no objections to granting the waiver, and we thank them for that. The additional items, number 1, we do have a wetlands permit in place. It has been in place since 2007 and has been expanded or extended until 2017, and it's fully mitigated, so that's not an issue. Land clearing permit, we understand we have to do that. We will do that. Thank staff for recommending the approval on the subdivision. I'm not clear about the maximum block length issue, if somebody could help me out with that.
No, I just made the comment to the board, that was an error in the staff report. It's the expanded entrance is what the waiver is required.
So
for.
do we still need a waiver? What is
Not
the,
for-
what is
just
the?
for the expanded entrance way, that's what the waiver is for,
Okay,
and which we recommended for it.
okay. Thank you. Restrictive covenants will indicate that finished floor level will be 1 foot above the street. The pond will be donated or dedicated to the parish for maintenance. As far as the landscaping or the landscaping maintenance around the pond, that will be handled by the homeowners association. We will correct the typical roadway section to show 4-foot shoulders at preliminary. Again, all the drainage issues that are on the engineering thing will be addressed at preliminary. State the maximum block length from our entrance all the way to the back of our street is only 665 feet. I don't know if that meets, doesn't meet, exceeds, or what have you, the maximum block length.
Yeah, it has to be on the plat.
I understand. Okay, that will be done. The pond will be wet. And as far as the downstream improvements in the stormwater site plan and the BMPs, and the issue with Aldridge Oaks, all of those remaining items there will be addressed at preliminary. And we have made contact with Tammany Utilities regarding the sewer, but it was just questions that we asked, and we will be in contact with them to resolve whatever issues we have there, if any.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this?
Can you tell me your name one more time so I can put it on the record?
Philip Mayu.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
My name is Charles Richard. I'm with the Homeowners Association. I just wanted to appear tonight to, we have an agreement that we've signed with Mr. Mayu that limits the property to 12 lots, and that they will follow all our restrictions and covenants. We just wanted to make sure that that was, because I know A4A, they can put more than 12. And that was when we came to the meeting before, that's what we kind of all agreed on, but we said that this is the meeting where we would have to discuss limiting that to 12. I know this is maybe not the right meeting. I know we have to go to engineering next, but we already have some drainage concerns in the subdivision. When Mr. Aldridge put his pond in on the north side of Archer's Way, we started having issues with the people on that side of the street having water in their backyards every time we have substantial rain. Like the one we had last night, those people had 2 nights ago had water almost to the back slab of the house. So we just want to make sure that, you know, we're bringing another development in there, that we want to make sure that those issues are addressed so we don't have homeowners with issues that, you know, can be averted before we have a crisis, for lack of a better term. So I don't know if this is the time to file that agreement that we have, that limits it to 12. You know, you guys would have to give us information on that. The subdivision is willing to work with Mr. Mayu. We weren't aware of the entrance. Okay. And it's not in our agreement, you know, most of the houses in the subdivision are 1,700 square feet or more. He has agreed to follow our restrictions and covenants, which limits it to says that the minimum square footage is 1,500. You know, we would just hope that maybe the houses would be a little bit larger than that, but we understand that he's following our restrictions and covenants that we that were drawn off our subdivision before, but, you know, that we just wanted to put that on the record also. I'm not sure if they would fit on a lot, but we just wanted to put that in.
Okay. Ron? is
Mr.
that
Chairman, yeah,
something-
just wanted to address his comments. The 12-lot subdivision is guaranteed because that's what he's applying for tonight, is a 12-lot
Okay.
subdivision. So he can't amend that if they approve it as a
Right.
12-lot subdivision. As far as the restrictions go, as far as whether or not, you know, the minimum lots, house sizes and things of that nature, those are private covenants that you and the developer are going to have to agree upon.
Right.
This commission cannot accept private restrictions and enforce them.
We understand that. We just wanted to
Okay.
be on the record that, you know,
Okay.
that we've had a meeting of the minds, we've all talked, and we all understand, just so you guys know that we're not saying that, we're saying one thing and he's saying something else. We have had meetings, we have sent emails back and forth, just so you are aware that we're not just showing up at the last minute. There's been discussions probably for the last 4 or 5 months before we appeared here today. But, you know, if you have any questions,
Paul, is the situation he referred to about the water coming up in the lots, is that something engineering can get involved in and see what the problem is?
Yeah, I had Jay handed my card. If you could just contact me tomorrow or whenever, you know, during business hours, and call me up or email me with details on the problems, I can look into it.
Okay.
With regards to that water intrusion from Aldrich Oaks coming into the existing Ruel Deshane subdivision, let me indicate that between the south side of my proposed development and the north side, where the water issue is occurring, there's about a 70, at the narrowest end, to a 90-foot green space area that's already in place. The water coming from Aldrich Oaks comes through a metering device that's at the back end of his pond and basically runs through an old, what I'm told is a long, long ago abandoned road bed, okay? And it's been brought to my attention that it may have been altered sometime in the past, but again, I don't know if you can enter into that green space right of way and do any work or not, but it's the way we intend to drain the water in this 4.5 acres is we intend to control everything within our project inside of ours, put ours in a detention pond, and then meter it out in a completely different location than where Aldrich Oaks goes, and hopefully that will help some of the existing problem, but I can't be certain of that because we haven't done any engineering work.
I can look into it, but I think that green space, I think we looked at that several years ago, and it was a conservation servitude on it, and the ownership was transferred to some group that maintains conservation properties, and it was part of the wetlands permit originally for the subdivision. That wouldn't be disturbed, if I remember right, so it'd be very difficult to go back and convert it to a drainage pond.
Right.
If that's the green space I'm thinking about.
Well, if you will notice on our plat, we did leave a little space at the end of the cul-de-sac in the event that water might have to be diverted to us in some capacity. We still don't know that yet because we have not done any engineering work. But we've left the space open in case some of that needs to be brought to us, and then have my 4.5 acres handle a portion of that water. I mean, hopefully we don't have to do that, but, you know, there's a possibility, or you know, so.
Okay, thank you.
our concern is that we already have an issue already, and I don't know if it'll make it better. We just don't want to, if it makes it any worse, then we're going to have at least 3 homeowners that'll get water in their property.
Okay, well, that's, you give Paul a
Correct,
call.
I'll give him a call. We've already
let's-
met with Mr. Dean, and he came out and walked it, but I don't know if he's aware of, because I wasn't aware that that was part of the wetlands.
Yeah, just
Conservancy.
just tell me the specific problems you're having so I can be aware of them when I review the plans. And As any of your local developers will tell you, I'm probably the hardest subdivision reviewer on drainage that you've had here, so.
Well, I mean, we just, you know, we want to make sure that as an association, we protect our
Yeah.
property owners. I
The
mean, we just
require-
don't want to make it worse.
Yeah, the requirement is they retain water, so they only discharge 75% as fast as the pre-development condition.
Right. Well, there was a logging road that ran through the property between Mr. Mayhew's, ours, and Mr. Aldridge, and when they were building the pond, they breached that logging road, and ever since that road's been breached, we've had a lot more water come through the property, so.
Okay, well, get with engineering and they'll get it all taken care of one way or the other. All right, anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Frankie Schweitzer, and I'm a homeowner in Ruelle des Chenes, and I am one that is affected by the water, and I came to talk about the drainage. I live right behind Mr. Aldridge's place. I haven't noticed any difference behind my house since he has been there and his pond has been there. Since I have lived there, the water has collected. Every time we have a hard rain, the water drains from north to south, and it winds up in my yard and my neighbor next door, and it takes it a long time to drain. If we have a really heavy rain, it goes almost all the way up to the slab by my bedroom. And I'm just concerned with the new subdivision being put in. If anything stops or blocks the water flow, I'm gonna get more water, and I'm afraid my house is gonna flood.
Okay. Please
so-
complete a speaker card. Paul, give her one of your cards also. You got the speaker card? Okay.
And I filled out a card, so you have
Yeah,
my name,
we've
phone
got
number,
it.
and
I wasn't aware
everything.
we had to, okay.
So
Paul, you have
that
another
is a
card?
big concern.
Pardon? Well, shame on you. You're supposed to bring the whole handful.
Okay, he said he's got it. That's all.
All right.
Thank you.
Get the phone number and everything from him.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this? I'll close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Lauren.
I have a couple of questions. Mr. Mayhew? At the entrance off of Ruelle des Chenes, going into the subdivision, that very first block of land that's not included, what's on that piece of property?
On the south side,
On the south side of Ruelle des Chenes,
that is green space.
that's pure green space. The reason I ask, I've been out there a couple of times, and both times that I went, there are a lot of small children that live in that subdivision, out playing, and there's a playground, right? Is it just adjacent to this?
It's probably gonna be about 150 to 200 feet, I would think.
Pardon?
Please come to the mic.
Yeah, I haven't seen the design. I don't know if it has all that on there. Is it directly next to the house that's already right here? Is that the last house right there?
This is,
Is that the last, I mean, that's the last
Yeah.
one. And the streets, the new street would be
Streets, yeah.
next to the existing house in Lot 11? I mean, this is just.
everything this way
Yeah,
is green.
I want to say that just, and this is, I mean, I haven't ever measured it. I would say it's probably a good 200 feet
You got-
along
you
or
got
more.
at least 125
Yeah,
there.
between there
plus.
to where that playground would be.
Everything,
The playground is south, so
Yes.
there's a buffer. What I'm concerned about is,
where's the playground?
you all know as well as I do, little
It's
children
next to the gazebo.
This way,
playing,
It's right next to
toward
it.
your house?
Yeah.
and you got a retention pond there that's wet. To me, there's a problem.
Well, everything around the proposed detention pond is green space and/or wetlands.
But little children don't know what green space means.
And just for your own information, where the pond is drawn on this map right here, you could see from the street is 125 feet, where the street is, and then the street is what, is that 60 feet?
60
So that's
feet.
180 feet.
Okay,
So-
you're comfortable with it not being a safety
Well, I mean, I
hazard?
would have to, I can't, I mean, like, I'd have to take some, I mean, I don't think it would be an issue. I mean, we have small children in the subdivision, and we definitely want to make sure that they're safe, but I mean, I know that it's a pretty good distance from where that last house is to where the woods end. And just going on by memory, I'm gonna say it's at least 200 feet or more. But, I mean, that's something we can, you know, if y'all need it, we can measure that. But, I mean, I mean, that is a concern, but, I mean, traffic has been an issue in the subdivision long before this was proposed. We have that long street, and that street, we do get a lot of complaints about people speeding, but that's been an issue since I'm the second house in there. I've been in there, I mean, I don't live in the second house, but I've been in there the second longest, and it's been a concern from day one.
Okay.
But I don't know if it would be, I don't think those 12 lots would make it any worse than what it is now.
I don't think he's
Okay,
concerned
thank
with
you.
traffic.
The other question I had is at the end of the cul-de-sac, it looks like there's a driveway cut through on the plot plan that I have. What is that to connect to?
Driveway cut through. At the back? Yeah. Yeah. That's,
At the very west end.
that's there in the event, as I spoke before, in the event that we have to do something with the Aldrich Oaks detention pond and maybe divert his water to us.
Okay, so it's like a right-of-way.
It's like a right-of-way.
Servitude, whatever you want.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
It may just be a simple, little shallow ditch to take some water that direction if we need it. If we don't need it, then it's going to disappear and become part of lots 7 and 8.
Okay.
Okay?
Does that answer your question, Paul?
Yes, it sure does.
Okay, Mr. Matthews, Mr. Davis?
Mr. Mayu, one of the Department of Engineering's comments is verified flood zone. Is this not in flood zone C?
It is flood zone C.
Everything's in flood zone C?
Yes, it is.
My only concern is, it looks like about 45 to 50% of your subdivision is in wetlands. Is that correct?
Is not,
Is?
is, was.
Was. And you're going to be able to control all that through the pond?
Yes. I received the permit from the Corps in 2007.
And
I
that-
mitigated the property in 2007.
That permit that you received, is it just for that section or for an overall larger section?
Just for the 4.5
Oh, okay.
acres.
Great, great. And this is not going to be a gated community in
No,
any
it's
kind of
not.
way?
It's part of
So
an
it's gonna be-
existing subdivision.
Okay. So the only thing you need is a waiver for the 80-foot front.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? Correct. I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Davis to approve. Do I have a second by Mr.
That's
Hines?
with the waiver.
With the waiver, of course.
With the waiver.
Yes.
Mr. Matthews, you had your line.
I still have one. It's kind of, I guess, a general question, though it does apply to this subdivision. And I guess it's really for staff. This is going to be a wet detention pond, and has any thought been given to requiring that these wet detention ponds be aerated? You know, we have had problems with West Nile virus, and everybody's talked about we need to eliminate any standing water, and these things are huge pieces of standing water to breed mosquitoes. Has anybody in the administration, staff, thought anything about doing this?
I'm not aware of any discussion on that point. But right now, there are no ordinances requiring, we'd have to have an ordinance requiring it for staff to require that as a developer as far as aeration or stocking it with fish or anything.
But doesn't this seem to be a large standing water problem to breed mosquitoes?
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice, you know, water quality even reasons for aeration, so you get higher dissolved oxygen levels in the water. It would be a benefit. No, that's going to be an ongoing electrical cost to whatever HOA has it and maintenance of the aerator. So it's obviously, it's just a political decision if you're going to require that or not.
Bill, that might also be something that staff needs to maybe take up with mosquito abatement district.
It might be cheaper just say throw a few fish in, you know, small fish in there just to create a population, eat
But,
all the
I mean,
insects in it.
around my subdivision, there are probably 5 pretty good-sized detention ponds that are wet, and we worry about mosquitoes.
You could probably get just a few, you know, get some minnows, throw in each pond and be done with it, you know.
Ron, could you maybe check with mosquito abatement and see what they normally do on the existing retention ponds we have in subdivisions? If they usually, you know, are good at treating these things, plus,
You talking about just detention ponds in general?
yeah.
Okay, I'll be glad to check
Yeah.
for you.
Call them and see, and,
Mike maybe can.
pardon? You think Mike needs?
No, I'll check into it.
All right. Jimmy, you have,
Yeah, one more question to Mr. Mayhew. Sorry, I forgot to ask you earlier on this. I completely forgot it again. I'm sorry. Wait a minute.
CRS.
Oh, now, this is the detention or retention pond?
Retention.
So the way it meters, you're not gonna have a pump that pumps it out, it's gonna automatically just rise and then just fill up and drain.
And meter out.
That's something that staff needs to look at. I think we need to get these things to, instead of retaining everything, to actually go ahead and have metering on it. Have pumps on every single detention pond and have this stuff pumped down.
you turned your mic off.
Sorry.
We have a few ponds that are pumped, but that's, you have a ongoing electrical cost, ongoing cost of maintaining the pump, and being dependent on electrical service. A gravity pond, it works during a hurricane or power outages or anything without anybody around. Where we've had to address flooding problems, for example, the Fountain subdivision, we went back and deepened the pond and added a pump on it to address flooding because that was the only way we had room to do it. Some of the big ponds where we do it for a regional area like Whisperwood Pond or Low Pond or Hazard Road Pond, that's a larger pond and it covers a region. If you start putting pumps on every subdivision, you're gonna have to have a division in Public Works just to maintain it. And during power outages, you're gonna have subdivisions with substandard drainage. It's a lot easier to do gravity drainage wherever practical, even though it uses more land.
Is there a suggested size of a retention or detention pond that we recommend from the parish that you do go to a pumping system?
No, it's pretty much, for the most part, it's been, 10-plus acre borrow pits that we've converted over to retention later. Or, Westwood Pond was dug for a retention pond, pretty much. Low Pond was a borrow pit. Hazard Road Pond was a borrow pit that we converted over. So it's basically been where there's an opportunity and we need pumps, we go to pumps, but where we can get away with it, we stick with gravity.
Okay. Well, I already made the motion to approve with the waiver.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, preliminary subdivision review, we don't have any final, we don't have any proposed amendments to 499, none. Any old business need to come before this? Mr. Mackey.
We have been, below these many, many months, asking our council to draft a proposed change to the ordinance and regulations and rules for our commissions. And I just wanted to thank our council. Tonight he gave the committee, which is you, me, and Dave, thank you. Just skipped it. It's getting old. A draft, and we're going to look at, and hopefully within the next few weeks or months, we'll have a completed set to come before us, and we can vote on sending it back to the council. And I just want to thank him.
Well, okay. All right, anything else under old business? Any new business?
I have one thing under new business.
Mr. Matthews, turn your mic on.
Notice we've been having lots of problems with the nameplates blocking the lights. Is there any reason we can't have the nameplates down below where the council has them?
Okay. That helps me see all the lights and be able to recognize
Everybody's
everybody.
moving them around, trying to make sure that their light's seen, and
Paul, you have a comment?
I'd just like to introduce Jeremy Harrison. He's the junior subdivision engineer we hired recently. He's working under Earl, learning the subdivision process, and he came with me tonight. I'm not sure how much longer I'll be coming to these meetings. He's gonna take over eventually and
Okay.
handle them.
Yeah, did you bring some cards, Jeremy? No, sir, I don't have any cards. Okay, next meeting, bring some cards, so that we know how to get in touch with you. All right,
I guess we've
No.
abused you enough, and you're gonna quit.
It's his turn. You give the new guy all the stuff like coming late at night to a meeting, right?
all right, any other new business? Mark?
Yes, sir. Move to adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Thank you.